Howdy, y'all. GooseFathr here. Here to tell you about what everybody predicted, which is a hotfix that nerfed Vat Acid. Huzzah! We're super happy about it. Just wanted to go over the quick hotfix patch notes because I know I have a couple of viewers that don't like mainline the Reddit subforums and can't find this information. So I just want to tell you a couple of things that were changed. But Vat Acid has been nerfed. It's still completely playable. It's just not a one-shot mechanic anymore. It's now like a build-up to kill you mechanic. It might not feel very playable against some of Mac's other faster, stronger boards right now, but when those get toned down a little bit, it'll definitely come back in. This is definitely a build that can be played with the item as it currently is. But I think they're planning on making most of the changes to other Mac items once they've kind of gotten their arms around it, once things have settled. This just needed a really big hotfix because it was broken. So just to explain it, in case you didn't know, the way Vat Acid was working is that it would put poison damage on your hero and then burn equal to the poison damage. This meant that if you poisoned twice, then the burn would be doubled. So when Vat Acid multicast, the first time you would get, say, 100 poison, then 100 burn. The second time you would get 100 poison and now 200 burn. So a multicast was a 3x multiplier to its fire damage, and every time you could spam it, that just kept scaling. That just multiplicatively kept scaling because the burn kept being a percentage of the total poison, which was out of control. And then if you add crit to that, crit became a 4 times multiplier of the fire damage because, of course, you're doubling the poison, which would naturally double your fire, but then your fire also crit. And then you were pairing Strength Potion, which was 100% crit chance, with the multicast, which meant you had all of those multipliers on top of multipliers, and it would just hit and one-shot you. It was completely busted and pretty easy to put together. That's fixed now. Still a viable build, maybe not in the current meta, but it's definitely a viable build relative to other builds' power, so I think it's a very good change. The other big change is the Dooltron had its total shield output halved, which feels really important because the amount of friend spam being used to trigger Dooley in the first place meant that he was just getting insane amounts of shield on top of being a good power damage dealer. And so it's a bit of a mid-range board, but it just also became a control board while doing mid-range levels of damage, which felt a little strong. So glad that they made that change. It's still also completely playable. I don't think it takes Dooltron out of the meta. I think Dooltron is still in a very strong spot, but I think it's not super easy to put together, and so it's perfectly okay being as strong as it is. So I really like this level of balance as well. And then there's a couple of changes I don't fully understand, but I can explain. Shadow Cloak just had one enchantment. The Obsidian enchantment would do 20 damage to you every time the item that it was hasting went off. Now it currently gives, like, let's say it's silver 5 damage to a weapon every time the weapon casts. Now it just doubles the amount of damage it gives to that weapon rather than itself doing damage. I'm pretty sure there were probably some shenanigans I just never saw of people using items that can bypass weapon cooldown. Or bypass the internal cooldown using charge mechanics to go just purely spin infinite next to this item to then just spam you with infinite damage. And so that's probably why this change was made. I'm just not aware of what build was using that mechanic. Earrings, I don't know why this was important. I assume there's a build I'm not aware of. Also, there's a lot of builds right now, Mac, that are niche, that are broken. And so if they're just fixing things before they become popular, that's great. But instead of fiery enchant on earrings just giving you flat burn, it now only burns when you slow, so spamming this item doesn't do burn. I'm starting to think that maybe it was the earrings that were being paired next to the Shadow Cloak, and those two things would have gotten out of control, so cool. Potion Distillery lost haste as an enchant because it was busted, because if you have a board full of potions and they all have haste, especially on something like Potion Recycler, where it keeps changing what the potions do for you and giving you regen and damage every time it does it. But the problem with that board is that potions are a little slow, but when it changed the potion, it kept the enchant. And so if you had all haste enchants, then that board would become very, very fast and would get very out of control. So you didn't see a lot of it because obviously, like, landing a particular enchant on a single item is not terribly easy on the large items. For him, it's very easy on the small items, but on the large items, it's not particularly easy. But I think that's an important change. It's obviously really busted when you were able to get it. And then the last one is a change to laboratory. Enchant a non-enchanted item for the fight instead of now it's another enchanted item, so it was able to enchant itself. And then it charged your relics. Now it charges other relics, so it was apparently able to charge itself. I'm not sure it inherently does anything. I'm not super familiar with that particular item or what it was being used for. I'm actually going to look it up. Sorry, I know this is not great video footage. So it's a 4-second cooldown. Oh, that does that. So, so if it charged itself and spammed, if it was able to charge itself among the relics, and it would spam and be charging all of your relics, including itself, and yeah, that would go infinite. Okay, that's nuts. That makes sense. So that's a thing that needed to be fixed. I didn't know. I haven't really played with laboratory, so that totally makes sense that was a little too strong. But cool. That is the patch notes. Very small. I think next week on Wednesday is probably going to be the same patch schedule they've always had, and we're probably going to have a lot of reworks on Mac specifically, but on everyone, but mostly on Mac, pulling a lot of other things into line. I know you're probably like looking at Poppy Field, scratching your head why that wasn't fixed or whatever, but they tend to only do the things that are just completely warping the meta, and Vat of Acid and Dooltron were completely warping the meta. They tend to only deal with those as hot fixes and then deal with everything else, even if it's overpowered on the next upgrade cycle. I have a feeling as soon as these two go down, two other things are going to be warping the meta. There's just a lot of builds right behind each one right now that are unplayable because these two were kicking their butts. But now that these two won't, they will start making other builds unplayable. It's just the nature of this game when you release a whole new hero. It took them so long to balance this game the first time because there's just so many weird item interactions, and people come up with combos you wouldn't consider, or the interactions play differently than you would consider. And so when you release 100 new items that are to be played all together at once, you're just not going to get it right. And so we're going to have a bit of Mac Fiesta where he has some very deeply overpowered builds for probably a month and a half or two. It doesn't mean Mac. I think Mac was stronger than all the other heroes by far. It's because that was just purely forcible. You could get it 50% of the runs and it was a 10-win run. But it doesn't mean Mac is necessarily always the strongest hero because he may or may not be deeply inconsistent. But if you have a single board that can beat every other board, then it means late games suddenly do weird shit. Like Pig, just as a hero, was a little bit unplayable. You couldn't get 10 wins out of him because Pig as a hero usually trades off a couple of middle days to transition into his big property boards that are supposed to survive late, and then they weren't, or into the big bonk board that's supposed to have enough hit points that it can survive any board, and it wasn't. And so now his whole archetype was falling apart. So they fixed the things that have broken that. And then they will start to rein those in. So anyway, looking forward to the changes. The big one, Vat of Acid, I begged for this. I literally begged for this in a Reddit post. It just needed to happen. Super happy about it. Just wanted to let y'all know. I know I got a couple of you viewers who follow me but don't necessarily follow the Reddit, so I thought it would be helpful to throw this out. So hope that helped, and hope to see you in the Bazaar trying some Mac builds that aren't Vat of Acid now. Enjoy, and I will see you soon.